Regional Union of Psychological Societies, 4th Congress and 50th PAT Convention. So without further ado, I would like to present our speaker, Ms. Kay Vardeleon.
All right. Hello. Good morning. I hope everyone is keeping safe. We have extraordinary times within us today, but it gave us opportunities like this to talk about and reach people in different ways. So this is our third webinar series that we're offering, hopefully to support persons and families as we go through together this quarantine and the days to come. Just to check now, is my audio and my video coming across well?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So let's start. I'd like to share with you our presentation. So our talk for today is enhancing family resilience during and post-quarantine. I thought I have a systems perspective. My approach in a lot of things is relational. That is the training that I got. And I thought that it's something that's important, that when we think about coping, we don't just think about individual coping. It's important that we teach individuals how to maintain their mental health, how to cope, how to be resilient within this kind of situation. But as important is we look at families, especially for this particular case. If more than anything there is a challenge that affects families, it's this. When one member of the family, especially the breadwinner, loses the ability to earn because of the quarantine, it doesn't just affect himself, it affects the entire family unit. When we talk about a viral transmission of a disease, of course, it affects not just individuals, but it affects the entire family. That's how one part of the family affects each other. In fact, when you think about it, just the concept of social distancing, the concept of physical distancing is a relational issue. Kasi di ka naman pwede mag-physical distancing on your own. No? So that has an impact on how relationships, not just individuals, actually cope with this kind of adversity. Just to emphasize parang what we're going to talk about. As we go through this seminar, we would also have self-reflection questions. So we'll have technical issues, we'll have academic discussions. But hopefully my intention is we have a reflection about how our families are also doing and how we could reach out. I'll just attend to some technical issues here. So for our tech support, I can't screen share. I think there's a screen share going on pa. Baka we could turn that off. Okay. There you go. Okay. So don't worry about if you'd like to have a copy of the presentation, don't worry about it. You don't need to screenshot. I'll have it emailed to all the participants. Okay. To start, one of my mentors, Father Tanalega of UGAT Foundation, said something about families that rings true every time I remember it. A family is both a wellspring, bukal, and a trap. It's a wellspring because you get a lot of the things that you need from the family unit. You get nurturance, you get your physical support, your food, your shelter, everything that you need to survive. You get your social needs. Sometimes you get your spiritual needs within the family. So within the family, that's the best support system you can have, especially for Filipinos who are very family oriented. But at the same time, people can feel that a family is a trap. One, we do not choose the family that we have, especially for families of origin. Diba? We are born into the family that we have. So for good or for bad, these are the people that we have a long-term relationship with. And that could mean a lot of things. We have a shared history. We have a parang culture, and we make do with what are the strengths and the challenges of each personalities that's within that family. And at times, because that is the long-term relationship that we have, if the dynamics inside of the family is dysfunctional, it can feel like a prison of sort that you can't get out. More so this quarantine, no, because you're stuck together in the same household. um, the household, the family is your wellspring. That's where you get your basic needs. That's where you get your information and support and all the things that you need to cope. But at the same time, no, when we did the other webinars, so one of the questions commonly asked is what if the source of your stress is your family? So you're stuck with them and you have to navigate that. So it's a little bit of both, and sometimes no, it differs when at what point in the family we're talking about. There are points when it's either or both. No, um, just to share where I'm coming from, a little personal sharing. I do come from a complex family structure. I come from a blended family. So if you see on top, that's my father's family. My mom's family is at the bottom. This is my family of creation right now. My mom has a first husband and two children from that a relationship. Her first husband passed away sadly from cancer. She married my father, then there's me, but that marriage did not work out. Then my dad has a different family, and then his wife has a different family also now. But what I learned, no, initially, this was a very painful experience, but it actually, depending on how a family copes, it can work out, even a typical family setup. So we all get along, we all know each other, and this kind of expanded family structure actually became a blessing in the end, because this is the largest support group that I could have. It's the one that I could be very grateful for, and that brings us to this concept of resilience. When we talk about resilience, it's the process of or capacity for or outcome of successful adaptation in face of challenging or threatening circumstances. If you look at the illustrations there, no, Filipinos typically define resilience as that of a bamboo, na pag merong hangin, malakas na hangin na dumating, no, the bamboo doesn't break because it can bend, and then it bounces back. Or if you look at the second illustration, there was a plant that was determined to sprout even though the soil it was in is not conducive to actually nurturing life. So that's resilience. No, it came about from the study of people who are showing strength in spite of circumstances that would normally elicit problems. So dati, the thrust of psychology is to look for mental health problems, to look for what is the effect of challenging circumstances on a person, no? Ano yung trauma niya, ano yung long-term impact on the person, no? But actually, over time, we shifted to positive psychology. Sabi na, hindi naman lahat ng tao who undergo difficult circumstances turn out negatively. So why don't we study those people instead of studying just the persons who are being challenged? The good news about resilience is it's not really inborn. No, meron mga tao na sabi, kasi ganyan yung ugali mo, ganyan ka na pinanganak, mahina ka kasi nung pinanganak ka. Actually, resilience is a learned trait. It's a learned behavior. Over time, you can exercise your muscles in coping with adversity, so that even though in the beginning things are difficult for you, you can actually become a more resilient individual. And this is a very optimistic thing to think about. And as a culture, diba, it's always touted na Filipinos are resilient individuals and a resilient nation. Now, the thrust of my talk for today is to talk about not just individual resilience, but family resilience. Family like individuals, you can consider them as resilient. Because there are families that can adapt to adversities and come out with positive outcomes. You have families, for example, who survive a suicide in their household. So sometimes something as tragic like that would have multi-generational effects. I've had clients na talagang hanggang ka-apu-apuhan, nararamdaman nila yung unspoken grief that enveloped the family because of that incident. But there are families who come together after a tragedy like that and then come out with an advocacy, come out with a decision to appreciate life, a decision to honor a positive memory rather than what happened that is traumatic for them. You have research on a typical family setups, no? Military families, OFW families, families who survive crime, divorce, etc. And when you study these families, merong mga pamilya talaga no, who can overcome such adversity. So the perspective of a family resilience approach is to not just look at what's the problem, no, what's the dysfunction, but rather what are the strengths of this family. Actually, one of the key learnings that I had no, with Father Tanalega, who was my mentor in family dynamics, there's no such thing as a bad family, just an unwell one, no, and you can make them better. You can look for the wellness in that kind of family. The interesting thing, the difference between family and individual resilience is family resilience is more than the sum of its parts. So hindi yan pag in-add mo yung resilience ni family member 1 plus family member 2 plus family member 3, automatically you'll have a more resilient family. Take for example, no, if you compare two families with 5 members, kunyari family 1, two of them have strong personalities, two of them have resilient personalities. Pero kung yung dalawang yun naman doesn't interact with the rest of the family, they go on their own, no? They distance themselves, they cope on their own. That doesn't necessarily translate to a resilient family. As opposed to you have a 5-member family na lahat sila medyo mahina pa in terms of resilience, pero they talk about their problems, pero they problem solve together, pero they have found tragedy as a way to come together. They may be stronger than the family with two strong personalities. So it's not that you add things, but you look at how when relational dynamics come into play, how does that create a system, a family that would come together? Um, so families are resilient. There's this a lot of the things that I'll share comes from Walsh, who did a lot of research in terms of family resilience amidst crisis. There are intriguing propositions that she made. It's not individuals who are resilient. Actually, it's people who are in relationships that are resilient. This is not a dig to the single, no? Hindi naman sinasabi na pag wala ka relationship, hindi ka resilient. But resiliency is something that you learn within a system, within a relationship. Kaya nga it's learned eh. You have to see it modeled on someone. And when you think about it, people who are well-rounded, people who are well-integrated, these are people who knows how to connect with others. Kasi if meron kang maririnig na sabihin nila, I'm resilient and kaya ako nagkaganto kasi I learned to depend on myself. Ako lang, no? I distance myself from everyone. Kaya pinaglaban ko yung sarili ko and that is why I made it this far. Yeah, no? They could be defined as resilient to a certain extent. But these are not people who grow up with a integrated personality. Parang may pinatay sila sa sarili nila, no, when they emotionally disconnected from their relationships to pursue personal well-being. Parang ano, no, sila yung mga tao na um, for example, my mom, no, my mom is a survivor, pero the way she survived is she stopped crying and she stopped attending to her emotions. So, ang nangyari is, siya yung tipo ng tao na pag may nakitang ibang umiiyak, nagdradrama ka na naman, tumigil ka na, di ba? Masyado kang mahina, etc., etc. So, yeah, though, they become strong personalities, but at the expense of their empathy. And sila yung mga pag nag-midlife, no, parang I'm lonely pala, no, there's something missing because I depended lang on myself. So it's people who are open. It's people who can let others in. That you can say that they're well integrated individuals. So families learn and use transactional processes such as connectedness and support for resilience that help them as a relational unit to become more resourceful and able to face unforeseen crises and difficulties more effectively. So there are dynamics that can be learned. All right, a little self-reflection. This may be our interactive way of reaching in a webinar. No, you can think about this. This is not a judgment of whether my family is okay or not. These are just points of reflection. Where we could see what we have to affirm in our family and maybe what we need to improve. No, my question is: during this pandemic, which would characterize your family more? Okay. First question: does your family close ranks or do they disengage during the pandemic? When they say close ranks, so they come together. Okay, we have a common enemy that we have to face. There's a crisis. So let's come together. Let's have a family meeting. No, okay, daddy, ikaw na yung mag may quarantine pass. Ate, no, you take care of your siblings while they're at home kasi mommy has to work from home or something like that. No, and if you have a problem, if you're anxious, talk to us about it so that we can give you emotional support. So, is your family closing ranks because of the crisis? Or is your family disengaging? So, ang laki ng bahay, tapos kanya-kanya kayo ng kwarto. Or even if maliit lang yung bahay, no, you see, during the crisis, no, si ate naka-Netflix, si anak ka-chat lang yung mga classmates niya, si mommy, si daddy, no, nag-break ng quarantine, nagsasabong sa labas, or something like that. So there's the family disengage, so you can have a sense, no, how you're doing as a unit. The second assessment, no, is your family reflective or projective? Reflective, as the term implies, no, you self-assess what is happening and what you need to do. Projective is you blame, no? So for example, a reflective family would say, uy, no, sana pala nag-save tayo. Sana pala, no, we allotted 10% of our income so that we could survive at an unexpected event. A projective family would say, ikaw kasi hindi ka nag-ipon. Tingnan mo nangyari sa atin ngayon. No? So you can think of it that way. No? Obviously, the one on the left is the more functional way of coping. Does your family attend more to feelings or to task? Feelings is, okay, how's everyone doing? I know this is not the ideal situation, but want to check in on you. Task is, so ano kailangan natin gawin? So ito, ganyan. The more functional is actually a healthy mix of the two. Any approach, any family culture that overly focuses on one sacrifices something very important. Kung puro feelings naman kayo, you know, you're all about mushy things, no? Then you don't get to goals, no? But pag puro task naman kayo, baka di na okay lahat. Pero you're just looking at, para kang machine, no? You're just looking at what's the next thing to do. No? Does your family during this pandemic have strong leadership? Or is it engaging in the power struggle? So the idea that families are democracies is actually not true. And it shouldn't be, especially in a crisis. Crises are situations where a strong leadership is needed. We think about that, no, not just in the context of a small system like a family, but in larger systems like a barangay or a nation. No, you really need someone who is decisive, because a crisis is a turning point. No, it's a turning point wherein whatever decision you make can either make you go up or go down. No, so for example, no, in the context of the nation, no, kung anong desisyon, no, ng IATF with the quarantine could either make or break the Philippines. No, we either have more cases or we flatten the curve. No, it's the same with the family. You know, you need a decisive person who would take a leadership position so that you can survive the crisis together. Or does your family engage in a power struggle? No, so may crisis. Kasi ako dapat yung nasunod eh. Dapat ikaw ganyan-ganyan, etc., etc. So that, of course, is the more dysfunctional, unhelpful family dynamics. Okay? Does your family have unconditional acceptance? I like this clip art. Sorry. Wala siya relation sa family, pero ang cute ng monkey tsaka ng dove. So, kahit may magkamali, no? Kahit na hindi perfect, you say, yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for exerting the effort. Thank you for um, doing your best, no? Or is it intolerance for mistakes, no? So parang, may problema na nga tayo, di ba? Pasaway ka pa, no? May problema na nga tayo, ganito pa, etc., etc. Does your family have social cut-off? Or is it community-minded in a time of crisis? Social cut-off, kita niyo yung picture, nag-hoarding, no? So, tayo-tayo muna kasi may problema, no? So, bala muna sila, no? So, there's a sense of closing ranks, but in such a negative way na it's being close at the expense of forgetting that you are in a larger community context. Or does your family become community-minded in a time of crisis? So, nagdo-donate, no? Nakiki-coordinate sa barangay, maybe helping with the relief efforts. Something as simple as they share on Facebook information, that's very important. Or you just be community-minded in your extended family. You check in. Kumusta na si mama, si papa living in a different place? Meron ka talagang sense that this tragedy, this crisis is happening on a larger context, not just within your family system. I think this is the last, no? This one is a bit more technical. Is your family aware of circular causality versus linear causality? What does that mean? No? Linear causality means people in a family assume that one thing causes another. For example, bakit si baby or bakit si little child is acting out, is being difficult? Kasi the parents are overly controlling. That's a linear causality. So kaya siya nag-overact kasi si parents is controlling. But a circular causality is so the cause creates the effect, but the effects create the cause. So for example, bakit si wife sobrang sensitive? Kasi si husband sobrang overpowering. Bakit siya overpowering? Kasi si wife is oversensitive. So it feeds itself. No? There's a dynamic that feeds itself. So that's why in the difference between dealing with individuals and families is you have to break a cycle. You don't just deal and help an individual, but you have to come there and break a cycle. So I hope now with this reflection you can have a gauge of how my family is doing and what are the things that maybe we could improve. All right. Let's go now to what actually are the factors that build family resilience. Walsh, which is my reference, one of my references here, look at three things. No, sabi niya, what she has found from research is common among families who survive crisis are belief systems, organizational factors, and communication processes. So let's start, no? A family belief system. So the belief system is how you make meaning out of crisis. Crisis kasi talaga is an opportunity for a spiritual analysis, no? So the best way to deal with the crisis is to find meaning in it. What is the meaning of adversity? How do you have a positive outlook? So para ring individual, no? How do you have hope? How do you master the possible? And how do you transcend, especially if there are losses? And losses are inevitable. Some families in this pandemic will have more losses than others, no? Like if they have a family member that passed from the COVID-19, more than the loss of freedom, no, mobility, they're actually dealing with an actual physical loss. So you cannot positive outlook your way out of that. You have to go to the grieving process and then find meaning at the end of the grieving process and transcend um, what is happening. So a reflection question here is, does your family discuss the pandemic? And as they discuss it, what family beliefs are surfacing? When we talk about family beliefs, no, they're explicit, meaning pwedeng sinasabi sila diretso. Alam mo yung pamilya natin, marami ng nilagpasan eh. Like, in my family of origin, no, my mom would always say, dati nga nasunugan kami, nawala lahat eh. So, kaya natin bumangon. So, that's an explicit family belief, yung kaya natin bumangon. Pero mayroong family beliefs that are covert. Ibig sabihin, you don't talk about it, pero nasa-sense mo. So, for example, if dad becomes an alcoholic because of the pandemic or the crisis, there's a belief there, no? And that's actually surfacing, not being discussed, pero okay, the way to deal with problems is to escape. That's a family belief, no? That children, that other members of the families get to learn because of how other members are reacting. Okay. So how is adversity in your family something to be embraced? Like, oh, di naman sasabihin, how exciting, there's a crisis. But okay, problems are normal in life, and we just have to go through it. We just have to find what's positive about it and how we could go further. Or some families, it's something to get over. Lagpasan lang natin. That's still a positive thing. Pero may families, no, something to avoid. Mga problema as much as possible na parang ayokong harapin. And sometimes avoidance is by shifting the blame, no? Ito problema natin, hindi naman natin problema eh. Kasalanan to ng gobyerno, kasalanan to ng ganyan-ganyan, kasalanan to ni Duterte, mga ganyan, di ba? But that is like an effort to not take ownership of the adversity. And even though we say no na may contribution yung larger system why we're suffering like this, iba rin yung may ownership ka of, okay, it is what it is. Wala na magagawa, nandito na siya. It is what it is. So how do we embrace that adversity? So some resilient family beliefs, no, we can overcome this together. Konting tiis lang. O, yung mga kwento, mas mabigat nga noon. We can learn something from this. Problems are normal parts of life. May mga tao naman natutulong, no? May mga na-survive naman tayong ibang challenge before. Very Filipino. Blessed pa din naman tayo, no? At least tayo may pagkain. At least tayo may shelter. At least tayo buhay every day. Or if you have a strong spirituality, no, we can find God in all things. So where is God in here? Let's still pray. Let's not sit down on the table and pray before eating our meals. Let's still sit down together and thank God for what is there. No? So a family who can have a collective belief like this, and there's effort from the the members of the family to share this belief and educate everyone about these beliefs, is a more resilient family. So you have to remember the family is the first school. So they don't learn this outside. You have to teach them this within a system. At the end of the day, it all boils down to values. No? Anong pinakamahalaga? Like I remember no, when my family of origin got into deep debt. Kasi nawala lahat. And one of my struggles then was, ako yung nagbabayad ng bahay na narimata. And I got depressed about it. And I got even to the point that I was suicidal about it. My mom, I will never forget, no, she sat us down and said, alam mo kung this is the effect on you of this problem, na pinapasan mo to, no, this financial obligation, benta na lang natin yung bahay. I can afford to let this go, basta you're okay. And that is something that struck me the most, because that presents values in a family, na mas mahalaga, the well-being of members rather than anything else, any material thing. And family beliefs will always go back to values. What is important? May crisis, maraming nawala. Pero ano yung mahalaga? Ano yung i-preserve natin if we have to make a decision what to sacrifice? The second characteristic, I hope this is helping. Webinar kasi I can't get a feel of your nonverbal. But yeah, I hope this is in touch with what your expectations are. The second characteristic of a well family or a resilient family from Walsh's perspective is organization. Hindi common, no, when people speak about families to think of it in terms of having a structure. But all families have a structure. There's a power hierarchy. There's a connectedness. There's a distance, no? Merong alliances, merong kampihan dyan. No, it's just like a political system. As a system, the family has a structure. And what Walsh found out is, so one, families that have strong leadership and coordination actually do better than others. If they are connected, they have lifelines, there's mutual support, they are more resilient. And if they have or can pursue, can try to get social, economic, and institutional resources, then they are more resilient. This is related to another theory about family stress and family resilience. So this is a combination of Hill's and McCubbin's double ABCX model of family stress and crisis. And basically it's saying that a family that goes from just a problem to a crisis actually deals with compounding stress or pile up of stress. So what determines a crisis, no? Kailan siya stress lang at kailan siya crisis in a family? This is influenced by three things. One is the stressor, how big it is, how intense is the stressor. So of course, a small stressor, like maybe a child failed academically, will not require as much coping skills in a family. Versus a big stressor. Of course, the pandemic is a big stressor. You have health worries, you have economic worries, you have uncertainty of the future. Dimagdag pa sa internet, no? Hindi ka maka-work from home kasi ang pangit ng internet mo, no? So, it's a big stressor, no? So, the bigger the stressor, of course, the higher is the capacity for it to become a crisis. This may even be influenced by what is the level of stress prior to the introduction of this new stressor. So for example, bago pa man itong crisis, kawawala lang ng trabaho ni tatay. May dementia si nanay, may PWD in your family. There is someone there are 5 people immunocompromised in your household, no, before this crisis came. So that can compound, and that can influence whether it's a crisis or not. But it's not automatic. So just because the crisis is bigger doesn't mean, or the stressor is bigger, doesn't mean it will go into a crisis. So it interacts with letter B, and that's resources. So does the family have resources? When we say resources, these are financial, material, but also emotional, relational, coping resources. So for example, a family who has a bank account that can survive the pandemic, of course, will not go into crisis versus a family who goes from paycheck to paycheck. So they could go into crisis if the resources is not significant. When it comes to coping resources, di ba, may kakayahan ba sila, no, to solve this problem? And resources can be outside of the house. So, mamaya, no, I want to share, yung mga tao magaling mga kapitbahay, no, yung kaya maki-coordinate sa barangay, ano nangyayari? They actually do better. Kaya when you assess, di ba, families who are a little lower on the economic status, madalas ginajudge, no? Bakit yung mga medyo naghihirap, parang masyado silang sasabihin nun sa BEC pag may relief, no? Nag-uunahan pag may pila to the extent na nakikipagbunong braso para mauna sila. On one hand, no, pwede tayong maging judgmental, sabihin natin, no, yung mga Pilipino, masyado silang, wala silang disiplina, etc., etc., etc. But that actually, in a certain way of looking at is resilience. Kasi they know how to get resources. Para alam nila, okay, merong ibibigay. So how do we go about getting it? And weirdly enough, even though hindi sila aware of the effect on the larger system, they survive kasi they have that mentality. So, a stressor interacts with the amount of resources. And then as we mentioned about family beliefs, it interacts also with perception. So, pwedeng malaki yung resource, malaki yung stressor, konti yung resource, pero the perception is, kaya natin tong labanan, the family doesn't go into crisis. Versus, the stressor may be manageable by resources, pero ang perception naman is, this is the worst thing that can happen to us. No, this is the end of it. Then the family can go into a crisis. Now, pag sinabing bakit siya bumibigat, ang difference sa family is yung tinatawag na pile up. The moment a family goes to a crisis, the stressor is not just the initial stressor. So you will have additional second stressor. And this second stressor has to do with family organization. So what does it mean, no? When there is a crisis, your family needs to reorganize. What? Roles, for example. Um, like when my mom started to have dementia, um, and then nasabayan pa siya when I have a brother-in-law na in dialysis. We could go about how we're doing things, pero hindi eh, kulang ang pera, wala nag-aalaga sa kanila, and everyone's depressed about it. So there's a structure that needs to change. And what's nice about our family that I recognize is, okay, sige, my sister said, I will take care of her full time. But that means you have to provide financially full time. There's a lot of sacrifices that has to go through with that. But the family reorg. And that reorganization is stressful. It has a lot of sacrifices, a lot of grief, a lot of adjustment. That's a pile up of stress. Um, a crisis can surface old issues. No, if there's a communication problem, if the marriage isn't strong to begin with, diba? Lalabas yan because of this new stressor, and that's a pile up of additional stressor. So with additional stressors, you must have additional resources. You kailangan humugot ka from your existing, but come up with new resources and come up with new meaning, perceptions. Because if you can do it or can't do it, you would end up with three things. You can adapt, meaning the family bounces back to where it was before, or the family can maladapt, get worse, no? Ito yung mga, we will cope by addiction, we will cope by physical abuse, we will cope by ignoring everyone. Or there is a concept called bond adaptation. Now, bond adaptation is the family becomes actually better than it used to be, closer than it used to be, more functional than it used to be, more spiritual than it used to be. You can think about that here, no, in Hill's theory. Pag may crisis, you would end up on the low. There is always a low point in a transition. You would have to reorganize. Para yung group, diba? There's a storming stage before you go to a norming stage. You would have to reorganize because the stress is piling up. No, it's not just this stress. There are other stressors. And depende pa yan, of course, in the developmental stage of a family. A family with very young children would cope differently with a family with adults, more adults than young children. Would cope differently with a family with elderly members or puro elderly lang sila, or a family with a PWD. So you have to reorganize to cope with the pile up because the pile up is going to happen. So when you talk of structure, it's about boundaries also. Every family, every relationship must have a boundary. The definition of a boundary is what maintains closeness and distance. In a family, it's important to have both closeness and distance. So a boundary is a line, but it has to be permeable. There has to be spaces for people to reach in. But it must be clear enough para alam mo na merong iba't ibang tao dun sa bahay mo. What does this mean in the context of the pandemic, no? There's reaching out. You have to ask, kumusta ka? No? Are your needs being met? How can I help you? But at the same time, there's boundaries. You have to respect them. If they say, I don't think you're dealing with this problem very well, you have to respect their feelings. You have to respect their thoughts. I'm depressed. You have to respect that. You don't take that as a personal attack. Bakit ka depressed? Inaalagaan naman kita, no? It doesn't work that way. You have to respect their individuality. You have to respect their privacy. Sa pandemic in a quarantine, that's very difficult, no? Kasi you're stuck in a house together. You spend a lot of time together. But boundaries basically could be as simple as, I will let you have your me time, even though we are here stuck together. Um, if you say, teka muna, overwhelming na, no, this is too much stress. I need to get out. I need to lock myself in the bathroom for a while. You will have to respect that. That is really very important for a family to survive. And this would reorganize in a crisis. So, yung dating hindi close, sometimes may have to be closer. Yung dating na sobrang close naman, may have to separate kasi you have to reorganize to deal effectively and do your functions as a family. And that's technical, no, but this is the nicer, more the softer, the more practical way of thinking about boundaries, no. This is from Virginia Satir. She is a humanistic family therapist, one of my favorite family therapists. She believes in validating every individual member of the family, and this is her one of the quotes, no, that expresses boundaries. I want to love you without clutching, appreciate you without judging, join you without invading, invite you without demanding, leave you without guilt, criticize you without blaming, and help you without insulting. If I can have the same from you, then we can truly meet and enrich each other. So it's very nice to think about in a family, you are still an individual. No, hindi ka lang nawawala because you are part of the family. You have to reorganize roles. So like I shared kanina, some people may have to shift roles. You have to reorganize rules, but make sure that the rules are fair. So in a crisis, there must be rules, no? So simple rule, no? Hindi tayo lalabas, quarantine eh. Social distancing, PUI ka eh, doon ka sa kabilang kwarto, no? Wash your hands, disinfect, no? These are simple rules, but kung walang leadership, no, nobody's implementing this, then the family is not going to survive or thrive in a crisis. And rituals, of course, help. No, rituals mean, okay, every day, upo tayo sa lamesa, let's pray. Rituals can be, actually, studies do show, no, that conversation during meal times is the best bonding Filipinos actually enjoy. So you must have those rituals, no, praying the rosary or whatever your religion is. Our ritual can be something as everyone plays with the baby. That's a ritual. Reading a storybook to young children before they go to sleep is a ritual. This helps, no, a family cope with the stress that is there. And like I said, no, a family that survives ay yung mga familyng marunong mangapit bahay. Pero may social distancing ngayon. Ano? You know, when we were having a financial problem in my family of origin, one of the things na I like about my sister is hindi siya nahihiyang mangutang sa lahat ng sambayanan. Kasi kailangan protective ang kapal ng muka. So, you must be able to know your neighbors. Hindi ka, yun yung problem, di ba, with condominium complex subdivisions, you don't know who is outside. But a family who knows their neighbors actually survive better, especially in cases of domestic violence. No, it's actually neighbors who are concerned and who can actually look into you kasi kilala ka nila. Nakikita nila na mukhang maraming pasaan na itong taong to, maingay sila masyado, no? It's really verbally abusive and mo yung mga naririnig ko. They survive better because they have connectedness. So if you have organizations outside of your family, you have a church org, you are a barangay tanod, you are a volunteer in some place, that's actually better because there's input also in your family. about best practices that other families are doing. Uy, sa kanila, no, yung ginagawa nila, gayahin natin, or something like that. Remember that crisis is also, and resilience of families can be placed in a larger context. So if your immediate family, to be resilient, is influenced by how your extended family is doing also. Lalo na sa Pilipino, di ba, minsan merong isa lang na kapatid na inuutangan ng lahat. No, but if the entire family is okay and can cope and can communicate well, they're okay. If your barangay, your local environment is organized, may influence yan on how your family is. Lalo na ngayon, ano? Di ba nakita natin aling city ang mga magagaling in handling the crisis, handling the relief, no? So the better mayors actually create more resilient families kasi nag-trickle down yan. And the same with leadership in a national, broader environment. If the government can do a good economic stimulus package, then mag-trickle down yan into a family and their immediate and their wellness. No? Okay, last. I hope you're still okay. Medyo nag-extend tayo past our target. But this is a very important one. The last characteristic of resilient families, understandably, is communication. A family that's resilient can clarify the situations, options available to them. They have open emotional sharing. Pag may problema, they have respite through humor. No, a family that can laugh about the problem can actually survive that problem, and they can come together for collaborative problem solving or pro-action. So how do we think about communication? Okay, the first rule of communication is there is no such thing as no communication. Um, Sometimes in therapy, people will come to you and say, "Ba't kayo naghiwalay? Kasi hindi kami nagko-communicate." Bakit hindi nag-survive yung family niyo sa pandemic? Kasi we have no communication. That's actually not true. Because anything you do is communication. Even if you do not speak, even if you do not say anything, that's communication. For example, your child locks the door whenever you try to ask them about yung boyfriend niya, kunyari. You want to ask them about the relationship they have, they lock the door. No, so that's communication. Wala siyang sinabi, pero parang ang sinasabi niya, wag niyo akong pakialaman. You get that communication and you would react to it. You either get angry or you respect it, di ba? Pag tinanong mo yung yung husband mo, anong gagawin natin? Meron ka pa bang ibang alam na trabaho? Tapos di siya sumagot. O yun yung sagot, di ba? Or nagdabog siya. Yun yung sagot mo. So whether you like it or not, what you do communicates, and that affects your family. So the implication of this is we have to be explicit. We have to be intentional. We have to actually say what we mean and what we want to say. This can be as simple as being explicit in your help seeking. Kasi sa Pilipino, mahilig tayo yun. Dapat alam mo na yan. Ba't di ka tumutulong? Dapat alam mong kailangan ko ng tulong. No? You have to be explicit. Can you help me with this? And how? I need you to listen to me. I need you to comfort me at this time. So there has to be an open communication and an intentional communication in the family. I don't know if you can hear, I have a little girl that just waking up. Okay. How do you have good dialogues within your family? So as I said, be intentional. Being intentional can be you have family meetings, para siyang organization. You have a weekly check-in with everyone so that you can discuss. Sometimes, that check-in can be clarifying a vision, mission, or a dream for the family. So, alam niyo, balang araw, ang gusto ko sa atin, ganito, ganyan, ganyan. And that actually creates resilient families. When you do communication, include everyone, including very young children. Akala ng iba, young children should be accepted in a discussion of a problem. Like this pandemic, how people are doing. But actually, you can include them and explain things to them, but in a way that's appropriate to their age level. Because whether you like it or not, young children are very sensitive. Even infants, no, studies show that if a mother is depressed, you create anxious children, anxious babies, because they can sense, no, that kind of emotion in parents. So you have to deal with that. And young children, manonood ka ng TV, bukas yung TV mo, nakikita nila yung balita. Alam nila may COVID, no? So, hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na these are parents' discussion. You have to ask them, okay, if this is what's happening, how are you? What are you doing? Even if it's as simple as asking them, di ba, parang, is there something here that you want me to explain? Para you could feel better and feel safer within our household. No? So yeah, explain what is happening in a way appropriate to the age and understanding of the family member. Like elderly with dementia, how do you explain the COVID pandemic? You would have to. There is a way of that, if only to assure them that you are doing your best, no, to take care of them. Very important, lahat ng damdamin kailangan tinatanggap, even the feelings that are hurtful for you to hear. So everyone has the right to say I'm angry. Everyone has the right to say I'm sad. Everyone has the right to say I'm frustrated. Because feelings are not chosen. No, they just come. So feelings are no different from the shape of your face, the color of your skin. It's just a part of you. Diba? In fact, all of us, we even have irrational feelings. We have feelings na alam natin mali, no? Maramdaman, pero we feel it anyway. Di dapat ako magalit eh, pero nagagalit ako eh. Itong taon to, wala namang ginagawa sa akin, itsura pa lang, hindi na ako, di ba? So we have feelings and sometimes they make sense, sometimes they're socially acceptable, sometimes they're not. But what we need to do is just allow ourselves to feel it and allow our family members. You just say, I hear you. I hear you're sad. I'm sorry to hear that it's difficult for you. But I want you to know that I'm allowing you to express that emotion. Ang di lang naman allowed is expressing it in a way that's hurtful and intrusive on the boundaries of others, di ba? Pwede ka magalit, pero hindi ka pwedeng magmura o hindi mo pwedeng saktan physically yung mga tao, no, na nasa bahay mo. Pwede kang malungkot, pero the moment you self-harm, the moment you express a suicidal behavior, of course, we can't just stand and not interfere, no. So just validate, but know that there are certain limits to it, and practice problem solving skills together. If you can teach um, very young children how to problem solve, that is a very excellent way to raise resilient families. Sana meron din problem-free talks, no? Like if you call your extended family on Zoom, wag lang tanatanong nyo, kamusta kayo? Ilan na yung cases dyan? You can also talk about problem-free topics, no? What did you have for breakfast? Anong niluto nyo? No? Ano meron dyan sa ano nyo? Sa mobile palengke, no? And stuff like that. Problem-free talks allow breaks from stress. Do your bonding while you're on quarantine. Sa amin na may family of creation now, no? Me and my 6-month-old and my partner, sumasayaw kami sa Never Gonna Give You Up. Dance as if no one is watching, no? So that's our coping, and that's your bonding. That's a way for your family to come together even though there's a crisis that's happening. Make sure there's affection. That's also communication. Satir again says, we need 4 hugs a day for survival. We need 8 hugs a day for maintenance, and we need 12 hugs a day for growth. So don't hesitate in hugging the people you love. Even babies, they thrive better, they grow better if they have physical touch, physical affection. And for all you know, no, may mga tao sa ating buhay na never had the physical affection of anything. And that can mean more than words. No? If they're having anxiety, you just give them a hug or a pat on the back, and that could mean the world, no, in getting through the other day. So problem solve as a family. Competent families solve problems as they arise, whereas families that avoid problem solving or seem incapable of dealing with many of their problems have more difficulties. I think this is self-explanatory. Conflicts, problems are normal. So really, it's the ability to think of solutions that are positive, that are proactive, is something that's very helpful. So there are two kinds of problems, no instrumental problems, like task-oriented, kunwari decision about how we get money, who should be the quarantine tribute to get the groceries. So you must know how to problem solve that. And affective problems are related to members' feelings and emotions. So often problems are a combination of both. There are feelings and task components, and you have to find ways to address both the best that you can. So because people aren't perfect and relationships are messy, we all need to learn how to solve conflicts. Yeah. So those are the characteristics, I think, of well families. I want to end my presentation with this. I don't know if you're a fan of the Lord of the Rings, but there's a character there, Frodo and Gandalf. No, they were coming through a tragedy, and they need to do something difficult. And one of the characters said, "No, I wish it did not happen in my time. Sana yung gantong problema hindi nangyari sa generation ko, sa panahon ko." And Gandalf was a wizard and presumably the wise person in the story said, "So do I. And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us." So the pandemic is not within our control. The number of fatalities is not within our control. How near it gets to us is not within our control. Di mo pwedeng sabihin, dito na lang sa barangay na yun, yung medyo malayo, wag dito. That's not within our control. The only thing we have control is what we do with the time that is given to us. Life is not what it's supposed to be. It is what it is. There's a radical acceptance of reality to that. So it's how you cope that makes the difference. Lastly, no, very interesting. When you talk about resilience, sometimes, di ba, what they say is that resilience is bouncing back. Actually, with any adversity, especially COVID-19, hindi na possible to bounce back. There's a new normal. Whether you like it or not, this has changed how we are. Even if sabihin mo, matapusin yung quarantine sa April 30, di ko alam May balita ba? Di ko alam. But even sabihin mo matapos yung quarantine, things are not normal anymore. Why? There's an economic implication to what's happening. So how society runs would be different. We may not be able to have a handshake for 2 years, no? We may have to practice social distancing and face masks until the time that a vaccine is there and a cure is validated, which could take a minimum of 1 year because you have to test it. Maybe we would not be in the same. Some families would have to deal with anxiety, health issues, fatality, and other long-term psychological things that would have psychological effects. It will never be the same. So returning to an old normal is no longer possible after experiencing a major event because the individual and the family would be changed by the experience. So what you need to do actually is to incorporate pain and unpleasant experiences into a new normal. Parang don't let go, but rather find the meaning of this crisis and then make sure it's back to your family and it made your family spiritual or stronger or more resilient. So skills and strengths that evolve with time and experiences in the context of each family. Sabi nga nila, no, mas maraming pinagdaanan ng pamilyang problema, mas kaya niyang humarap, presumably, if they are learning from each adversity. So that ends my presentation. So thank you. I hope it wasn't too long for you. I'll give it back now to our moderators. So in case you have feedback or questions, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Miss Kay. So now is the time for our question and answer portion. So just a reminder, you may raise your hand during the Q&A. So there's a button under the participant section, or you can ask anonymously